Hello, welcome back to another day in the arena. Today we are doing day one. We're going to play a mono black starter build. It's going to be on the aggressive side, trying to rush the opponent down with black creatures and artifacts. And I'm excited to share it with you today. These day one builds, this day one build can be built 100% with cards you receive for free without any type of extra grinding the first day you log in right now. That is as long as we have these free playsets of Aether Revolt and of Kaladesh. We're definitely going to keep this hand. Things will probably change before the game goes to open beta, so if you are watching this many months down the road, what you get as kind of a beginner in the game may be different, but right now, if you are joining the closed beta, you do get immediate access to all these fine cards from Aether Revolt and Kaladesh, which makes a lot of good starter builds possible. So this is a black aggro one. This is Night Market Lookout. It's a 1-mana 1/1, which is bad, but when it becomes tapped, each opponent loses a life and you gain 1 life. So it's like it hits for 2. And getting to play this card, well, you'll see a lot of other synergies for this card with vehicles, crewing vehicles. You get the ability. And we've got a nice 1-2 punch going here already with the Syndicate Trafficker. Sacrifice an artifact for a counter, gains indestructible. And we are crashing in for the beats. Our opponent with 2 forests, that doesn't threaten much in terms of sweepers or anything like that, so we're just going to throw the whole kit and caboodle of little creatures at our opponent and say go. So the mono black deck, well, I guess we'll get into it more when we go talk about the build itself. I'm not going to overthink it right this minute. So a Thrashing Brontodon, our opponent does have a play, a creature. We draw Yahenni off the top. So a lot of options here on this turn. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sacrifice the Ballista to the Syndicate Trafficker and Fatal Push the Brontodon, I think? That, or we play Yahenni and just attack with everybody. If we play Yahenni, attack with everybody, the Brontodon blocks something. That's not great. Another land would have been really nice here, but it doesn't look like that's what's going to come up. So yeah, we're going to make this play. We could also just fling the Ballista, but that doesn't provide a permanent counter on the tracker like this does, which has the potential to do more damage in the long term. Fatal Push, once you have Revolt, which is why we had to get rid of our Ballista first, can kill a creature with a 3 or 4 casting cost. So our opponent's down to 5. They have a Steel Leaf Champion. That can block and trade with the Trafficker, but then our opponent goes to 1. So Yahenni here should be lethal, as the haste will let everybody get in. And it looks like we're just going to rush down the green deck by just going face as quickly as possible. And I don't think there's anything they can do about it, and yeah, that's game. So, right out the gates, mono green with a bit of a slow draw. However, if they had a Llanowar Elf, we still would have killed it with a Fatal Push or our Walking Ballista. Alright, so let's look at the deck really quick. The deck that you're given as a starter deck right now is called Graveyard Bash. It is not a very good deck. It is pitched as a zombie deck, but it only has 2 zombie lords and they don't do much, and a lot of the zombies in that deck are very bad. So it takes a lot of work to make that deck work, and it's going to take a lot of like rare wild cards to get the right zombie cards, and there's a lot of zombie payoff, but it's rare. So I don't recommend going the zombie theme right out of the box. I recommend going with a black aggro theme. So we still have Diregraph Ghoul because it's a 1-mana 2/2, and Night Market Lookout, well, you saw, it's like a 1-mana 2/2. We use all the Fatal Pushes that they give us because it's very good in small creatures versus small creatures type events. And we have Dun Operative, which if you get an artifact out is a +1/+0 in Death Touch. You're going to see a small artifact theme. That shouldn't be a surprise since Kaladesh is all about the small artifacts. and vehicles. So don't be surprised that there's going to be an artifact theme in probably all of our starter decks for this closed beta situation that we have going. Gifted Aetherborn, Glintsleeve Siphoner is a very excellent card that you're given 4 of. It's a rare, and it feeds off energy, so you're going to see a tiny energy sub-theme. Scrap Heap Scrounger is an excellent card that you get. It's probably going to make it into just about any of these decks that want to attack, to be honest. We also have 3 Murders as some more removal. Yahenni, all 4 Aether Sphere Harvesters, and none of the Hearts of Kirin. I found Heart of Kirin not quite, like, it was just making the mana curve too high. When we talk about mana curve, it's kind of a deeper theory and a deeper subject to talk about, but the idea is that you want a sloping curve because you would like the odds of playing a strong card that costs 3 or on turn 3, a 4 on turn 4, a 5 on turn 5, etc. But in order to do that, you have to play probabilities. So if you want a 1-drop or a 2-drop, you have to play more of those cards to make sure that you draw them for turn 1 or turn 2 more often. And then the probability goes down because the more cards you draw out of your deck, the more cards you see, the more likely you'll find the things that are lower on the curve. Anyway, this is a very aggressively curved card deck, and while I love Heart of Kirin, I found it a little tough to crew. Maybe there should be 1. I wouldn't be opposed to that, but I've been liking the way it plays just fine with what we have. Yahenni, the Harvesters, a Gonti, which is kind of out of place. The rest of the deck is very aggressive, but black has a lot of weaknesses. It can't deal with artifacts, can't deal with enchantments, has trouble with certain large permanents. Gonti is like, in its own way, a failsafe. It comes out, it is a body, it can crew a Harvester or the Fleetwheel Cruiser we're going to get to, but it also might be able to pull something out of your opponent's deck, either take away one of their big bomb plays, or get you a way to deal with a troublesome permanent, like a cast out. If you can find a cast out of theirs, you can clean up just about anything they do. A Sky Sovereign is, well, shouldn't surprise you that this makes an appearance, as it can dominate. It can also just take over the small creature matchups if you had an awkward early game. Walking Ballista also will likely be in all these starter builds, so get used to that. We're running 20 Swamps and 4 Aether Hubs. Aether Hubs aren't here to produce other colors, they're here to create energy for Glintsleeve Siphoner and Aether Sphere Harvester, which for energy gains life link. Alright, let's dive back into the games. And we are just simply playing on free play, constructed rank. Just anybody we come up against. I'm sure many of them will have crafted cards, and again, these are all cards that you get for free by starting the game. Trying to show that it's not only pay to win, my friends. Good deck construction and some good play, and you can beat just about anything you come up against. It is important in that way that you're going to find a lot of these starter decks are going to be aggressive. If you are by nature a control player or a mid-range player, you may be a little disappointed at the level of aggression, but that's because when your collection is smaller than your opponent's, the best way to steal games is to not let these rare and mythic cards that they've been crafting really affect the game. And if you can kill them before they get to draw or cast them, that's a very good strategy and a way to get smaller, more budgeted collections victories that they would otherwise have a lot of trouble with. If you play a slow deck, then you're going to have to grind your way through their very difficult and very frustrating creatures. And mythic and rare wild card spawned crazy effects. Who knows what all they'd be building. I said creatures, but that's obviously, it could be anything. Could be anything. All these Scrap Heap Scroungers, we're going to have to get those on the battlefield quickly. We didn't have a 1-drop creature there, which is sad. We don't have a removal spell either, so this is one of those iffy hands. But let's lead off with Scroungers. If our opponent is on a control build, Scrap Heap Scrounger is one of the cards you want. It can drive them crazy. Ooh, ooh. Like no one else. Who will drive them crazy, and I can't help myself. Ooh, ooh. Alright, land off the top. What do we want to do? Yahenni is the mana efficient play. It's very likely not to live, and Yahenni is much better with another creature on the board that you can sacrifice so it actually has indestructible. I'm going to keep playing Scrap Heap Scroungers. See if we can draw even more counters out of our opponent. Not this time. Looks like a Grixis deck. Will we have the Bolus? We will have the Bolus. Which is interesting. We can just discard this Scrounger. Might come back later. We will untap. We draw a Fatal Push. It's very tempting that this is a creature that can be Fatal Pushed if we have Revolt. So one thing that we could do here is attack with Scrap Heap Scrounger. If he blocks, we Fatal Push it. We can play like a Dune Operative and get a Scrounger back later. The other thing we could do is just play out Yeheni. What I think I like the most is a bluff attack with the Scrap Heap Scrounger, and then we play our Dune Operative and leave a black up. Our opponent will likely play something that kills the Operative, allowing us to Fatal Push the Ravager. Also, I don't think the opponent will block on the bluff attack. I think they'll be too nervous about something going wrong. And if they do, we'll have Revolt anyway. All right, so there you go. We got some damage in. We'll play the Operative. We'll say go. If the opponent does anything to kill it or mess with it, we'll Fatal Push their Nicole Bolas. Then we get to save the Murder for something that might be much tougher, like a Scarab God or a Torrential Gearhulk. Okay, the opponent not walking into the Fatal Push. We can that's respectable. Our opponent may have a counter spell. Let's try casting Yeheni. It may get countered, which would be sad, but that would use our opponent's mana, and we get to attack for 6. If it resolves, it might be able to give our opponent fits. And if it's countered, it goes to the graveyard, allowing a Scrap Heap Scrounger to come back later. It doesn't trigger Revolt, though, when something is countered. It has to leave the battlefield, and something that's countered never made it to the battlefield, so we don't get to Fatal Push that Nicole Bolas. Well, not just yet, but we are winning the race, so don't get too disheartened. Nicole Bolas has an excellent flip ability, but it does cost 7 mana. Our opponent's likely to go to 6 on this turn. And there is the 6th mana. Our opponent with 3 cards in hand. If their best play last turn was a disallow, I'm starting to think that they actually don't have a removal spell, which hopefully will mean we get to keep attacking until they die. However, 6 mana is Torrential Gearhulk, which is a very scary card. Right now there are counter spells in the graveyard, so we want to try to play in such a way where we can ignore those. And our opponent just passing the turn, deciding to play defensively. So I think we attack here. If the Bolas blocks the Scrounger, then we can Fatal Push it, and we can get back 2 Scroungers. That's pretty darn good. There's also a chance, if our opponent somehow spends their mana, that we can Sky Sovereign. And this leaves open Murder in case our opponent does play a Torrential Gearhulk here. Okay, we do get a block. Steal the damage. All right. We could try for a Skyship. That's very bad if our opponent has a counterspell, because then we also don't get these Scroungers back. So I'm going to use the Fatal Push instead. Yep, there is the Torrential Gearhulk. It obviously means to counter the Fatal Push. So we're gonna have a tough decision, which is whether or not to murder the Nicole Bolas, or whether or not to murder the Torrential Gearhulk. One more land will allow our opponent to flip the Bolas. That's actually, as frustrating as that would be, it can't do that much bad stuff to us. So, I think what I want to do most is get back my Scroungers, and then we can also hold up Murder if the opponent decides to go for Bolus and use it in response. But what I most want to do is get back my Scroungers. Then on my turn, I can murder the opponent's blocker and see how much damage we can get him for. But there is the 7th mana. Now, the opponent could try to activate the Bolus, and we could murder in response, and that would be a good use of killing their turn, but it wouldn't be great with the Scroungers. We also have to be careful not to murder the Gearhulk, then have the opponent transform the Bolus and get it back. So, complicated game. And the opponent is coming in with the Bolus. That is fine. Okay, so the opponent goes for activating Bolus. We could kill it. We could get back the Scround, or we could have the Scroungers back. If the opponent doesn't kill the Dund Operative, if the opponent specifically doesn't kill the Dund Operative, we win the game. So we're gonna let this happen. I don't think my opponent's gonna minus Bolus to kill this creature.
There are none greater than I.
Yeah. If it tries to get a creature out of our graveyard, then we can just exile it with the Scrap Heap Scrounger and not allow our opponent to get away with that. So I think we're okay. There's a chance we just win. Let's see what the opponent does. They are going to shoot the Dun Operative. All right.
I think you ought to die.
So now, scrounge up some cards. And a Walking Ballista. Is that good enough? Oh, it's almost good enough. It's 1 life point shy. So again, it's a -4 to get a creature back, and our opponent doesn't have a removal spell in the graveyard, but they could cast one if they untap. So what I'm thinking is I kill this Gearhulk and the opponent gets something back. I think the safe play is going to be to kill the Gearhulk and the Bolus here. We could also attack Bolus with both blocks 1 and Sky Sovereign takes out the Bolus, but I don't like that as nearly as much. So we're going to play this Murder. Gonna send you here and you here. Actually, yeah, because if our opponent doesn't have life gain or another Essence Scatter, we just win. This is so tough, though. Yeah, I think I'd better kill the Bolus. Drawing 2 cards a turn can just get right out of hand. I think we've got to go for it this way.
Don't you know who I am?
I don't feel bad throwing the Ballista away because I can get back another Scrounger with its body.
I'm not finished. My retribution will be swift.
I am worried about another Bolus making me discard the Sky Sovereign. That's not great. Prophetic Prism. Weird. That is not what I expected to see in the deck at all. And our opponent's done. I think we navigated that game well. Considering all the options we had, we were able to... our Fatal Push ended up getting countered eventually, but we did have the Murder for the right card, which if we had a Fatal Push in our hand versus that Gearhulk, we would have been much worse off. So I'm pretty happy with how that game played out. Feels good. It's also to remember that you have 4 Walking Ballistas in your deck, and getting your opponent like down to a low amount of life does give you top decks that can just win, like Walking Ballista. Sky Sovereign's not meant for that matchup, although it's far from a dead card. Sky Sovereign's built more for, obviously, like tribal decks and small creature decks, matchups it can utterly dominate. that face. I mean, that face, you guys. When did Gideon turn into a werewolf? I mean, my God, man. How about that tan? It's crazy. All that time in the desert, I guess? I've got another Gideon card right here. I don't think he's that tan at all. Alright, we'll keep. We're going to want another land, but gotta have faith. We have a 1-drop, a 2-drop. We have some removal. We're on the draw, which is where you want removal. So, not a lot to complain about. Let's start this party. Opponent with showing us the meaning of manners. We'll say hello back. If they're on a Chain Whirler deck, that's very bad for a card like Night Market Lookout. Still, I don't think it's worth letting it sit in your hand. I'm not sure what could take so long on the second turn, but I guess we'll find out. Reading the Night Market Lookout, possibly deciding whether or not this is worth a Lightning Bolt or an Abrade. Most players have a hard time using a premium removal spell on a 1/1, unless it's Llanowar Elves, but we'll see. That's a lot of timer rope for a turn 2 play. A lot of rope. And eventually decide to use the 4-mana damage spell on the 1/1. Yeah, I can see how that could be a lot of debate. It does imply that they don't have a Chain Whirler, which is good news for us, as Chain Whirler is a total brick wall on the Scrap Heap Scroungers. Our opponent may also be trying to farm the free wins that sometimes come from people not willing to sit and wait for them to rope every turn into the ground. Oh, we're taking action this time. Slightly, much quicker than last time anyway. Okay, Abrade will take out a Scrounger. So our play is going to be a Scrounger. We may as well get the one back from the graveyard instead of play the one in the hand. So I'm just going to pass the turn and get back Scrounger on end step. Missing that land drop though, scary. Alright, we drew a Siphoner, which we'll probably be playing here in a moment. Okay, we could Fatal Push our own Scrap Heap Scrounger. Our opponent wouldn't gain 2 life and we'd still have the resource. So my opponent's giving me the vibe of a black-red control deck. Against those, I would prefer to be grindy. In fact, we have 4 removal spells in our hand. It's not even clear that they play creatures. So I think I like this play, but then we're just not playing another creature, which is not good. But the problem, of course, is that I play another Scrap Heap Scrounger, it also gets exiled and we have no pressure. So I'm actually going to do it, and I don't love it. Especially since we're not making presence on the board, but we're not going to rush our opponent down in this game anymore. It has to be about card advantage and having more threats than our opponent has answers. So that's why I'm taking this weirdo line. And I suppose I'll play the Aetherborn. The Siphoner I would prefer to be one of the last cards I play, especially after I play a Harvester, so we have energy. And this Aetherborn, if it goes to the graveyard, great, we get back a Scrounger. If it gets exiled, great, they didn't exile a Scrounger. Yep, this is definitely a kill-it-all type deck. Okay, we found another swamp, so our opponent's used 2 Abrades. I think it's worth putting out the Harvester. Our opponent may not have a good solution to it if any of their remaining removal is sorcery speed. And that contempt from earlier makes me wonder. We're still waiting for some kind of threat or whatever they have to win. Maybe their plan to win is completely cut to ribbons. The Arch of Orazca certainly implies that they're looking to play a much longer game. So I'm going to get this Scrounger back, like so. I'm going to crew this Heart of Kirin. Oh, I'm sorry, this Aether Sphere Harvester. And I'm going to send it in for battle. We'll see if our opponent has yet another removal spell. They do not. So this is the part where you wonder whether or not you're supposed to play a Glint Sleeve Siphoner. If our opponent doesn't have a removal spell, we're great. If they do, it's sad. If they have a sweeper, it's no big deal. We get our Scrounger back. So I think it is time to deploy. I'm not sure what cards our opponent would have if they're not removal, but the fact that they took that Harvester hit, maybe they have sweepers. Sorcery speed stuff. Yep, Yahene's expertise. Okay, Tormenting Voice will discard a card and draw them 2 more. Fight with Fire. So it's a Fight with Fire top-end deck. Probably has no creatures at all. So I'm very glad we used the Fatal Push earlier to save our Scrounger. It's going to take a lot of resources to battle through this opponent. Drawing more lands is not really what we're looking for. Now, whether or not to use the lifelink here, it can buy us like an extra turn and force our opponent to use multiple Fight with Fires. I think I'm going to do it. Normally I'd just save that energy for card draws, but I think this is the right thing to do. Now, do we play the other Scrap Heap Scrounger? I guess so. If our opponent has another sweeper, we just get another Scrounger back. And if they don't, the upside's much higher because we're dealing 6 a turn instead of 3. Okay. What do we have to get back? Nothing, really. Another Scrounger, maybe, which we can just kill and it goes back to our own graveyard, so I'm not even afraid of that Eldest Reborn very much. And I'll hold this Aether Hub to discard to this Elder Reborn next turn. And our opponent hasn't been able to kill the Harvester yet. I think I should just keep attacking with the Harvester. They might have like something like a Lightning Strike to kill the Scrounger to prevent them from taking any damage. Also, that lifelink, like I said, it might actually let us survive longer. And we do have Walking Bliss in our deck, so we do have endgame. If our opponent's really trying to burn us out, we should make it take as many Fight with Fires as possible. Well, our opponent has something that's holding priority. If they were going to kill it, I wish they'd have just done it before combat, but no, appears not. I could also discard these murders. I think I can still use them to save my Scrap Heap Scroungers from exile, and our opponent may still surprise us with a creature of some kind. Mana is tapping. It is a Primal Amulet, so that's their other way to win, is they can double up the cost on some things. Or double cast once they flip this amulet. But I'm sure that now isn't a great time for it. Well, now they have City's Blessing, so they can start using the arches. The golden arches here. So this is going to be a race and an interesting game. I definitely want to keep gaining life to at least make the Primal Amulet Ribbons thing not easily lethal. There's a Banefire. Sure. Okay. I'll have to exile one of my Scroungers, but that's okay. Now there's nothing in the graveyard for the Eldest Reborn, and if I draw a creature here, we get in for 6 damage. That would be really good, and we do. All the Scroungers, baby. This is why Scrounger is such a ridiculous card. Our opponent's hand is completely empty. We're closing in. They're at 5. The top of their deck will have to be good. The Eldest Reborn has nothing to get back because their Scroungers ate our whole graveyard. They have Arch of Arazka to get a redraw, and now they'll have 3 mana to make a play, counting the Primal Amulet as a mana. Doomfall. Yeah, that's a good one. So we have to top deck a creature. That counts. Fleet Wheel Cruiser, baby. 5/3 haste. All right. Looks like we're going to complete a quick 3-0 run with this all starter cards, no crafting, no dollars whatsoever deck list. Had a lot more play to it than I expected. Some opportunities to be very smart with your removal while staying aggressive. I hope you'll give it a try. I hope it'll win you some cards and some gold and get you on your way in Magic Arena. So thanks for coming out for this day 1 video. I appreciate you very much. Stay tuned to the channel. I'll try to do at least 1 a week, maybe more. And for today, I'm CGB, and I'm out of here. Later.